Sonorous, written by D.B. Gooden, narrated by Brittany Goodwin. Chapter 1. New York City, 2071. Alice Parsons hurried down 10th Avenue toward 14th Street. Late for work. Again, she admonished herself. Turning a corner, she saw that the line at Java Steve's was longer than normal this morning. It was out the door. Johnny can't start his day without his espresso, and I better never forget it. As Alice looked farther down the block, she saw a major national chain called Starstruck. It didn't appear to have a line. Should I? She wondered, before quickly deciding Johnny wouldn't approve. About 20 minutes later, Alice was finally at the counter of Java Steve's. The young woman in front of Alice paid for her double mocha choco chip with extra tofu, mufu, and bland. "What's mufu and bland?" Alice asked her. The 20-something gave her a stone-faced look. Then, when her face morphed into some silvery diamond-faced object that vaguely resembled a human female, Alice stepped back and almost collided with another patron. That's new. What augment was that? Alice despised the trend of biotech implants that had been all the rage for the past 20 or so years. She had stopped dating because of it. All the guys she met with online apps such as Minder and Snowball had pure, unmodified human sections, but most of them lied, especially when the date became intimate. One of them hadn't even been a guy at all, but a cybernetic modified female. "The usual?" the man behind the counter asked. "Uh-huh," Alice said. "What's the matter?" he asked. "I'm late again, Stevie," Alice said. "Don't you work for your cousin?" "Yeah, but Johnny has threatened to fire me more than once," Alice said. "Well, if he does, you can always work here." Stevie handed the drink to Alice. "Wow, that was quick," Alice said. "Yeah, I saw you in line and pre-made it." "Thanks, Stevie," Alice said, smiling. As soon as Alice left Java Steve's, she picked up her pace. 5 minutes later, Alice walked into an artist's studio. A man dressed in a dirty white painter's apron was examining a piece of metal that resembled a rectangular slab. His beard was unkempt, and he wore small oval sunglasses. Alice couldn't be sure, because of the sunglasses and the fact that he never turned around, but she suspected that he had worked, or partied, all night. "Go ahead and place the coffee on the table, Alice," the man said without turning around. "Sorry I'm late. The line was longer than usual this morning," Alice said. "Java Steve's?" "Yeah, I know how much you don't like Don't utter that name. You'll ruin my palate," the man said. What the hell is Johnny going on about now? "We need to get that commissioned work over to the museum by noon. Can you confirm with Oscar to make sure he is timely?" Johnny asked. "Sure thing." When Alice looked back, Johnny was caressing the metal rectangular slab. Artists. Alice entered Johnny's corner office. The pile of papers she had left on the desk before the weekend had toppled and was sliding onto the floor. Why didn't I file those before I left for the weekend? She picked up the phone and dialed Oscar. "Hello," Oscar said. Why does he always answer the phone this way? "This is Alice from Johnny's studio. What's your ETA?" "Should be there before 10, Oscar said. "Will that give you enough time?" "The museum is in the East Village. Shouldn't take long." "Even with the president in town?" "He's downtown. We will be there with plenty of time to spare," Oscar said. A wave of angst washed over Alice as she hung up the phone. Why am I so nervous? Johnny wouldn't fire me for being late, but he might if this delivery doesn't go as planned, Alice thought. About an hour later, Alice finished filing the ever-growing stack of papers she'd been avoiding for weeks. A loud buzzing noise interrupted her thoughts. She pressed the button next to an ancient-looking phone. "Johnny's studio," she said. "Open, señorita," Oscar said into the intercom. Alice pressed the button next to the intercom. A few minutes later, 2 men entered. She recognized Oscar. Alice looked at her watch as Oscar finished loading the metal monstrosity into the back of the truck. It was 10:48. Yikes! "Do you have room in your truck?" Alice asked. "Why?" Oscar replied. "I'm coming with you. I need to collect a receipt from the curator." "Nah,
I will send it over via courier, or digitally, as I always do.
This piece is special. I need to ensure it is delivered, Alice demanded.
Suit yourself, señorita, but won't Johnny miss you at the office?
When he is in his creation mode, he sort of tunes people out. After a moment of consideration, Oscar said,
Might be a tight fit, but hop inside.
Oscar turned on the radio as they drove across town. Some stylized techno music played. Oscar seemed to enjoy it because he tapped his fingers on the steering wheel in time with the music.
Ugh,
Alice scoffed. You like this garbage?
I do. It's kind of my funk,
Oscar said. You know that this music was created by an AI, right?
An AI?
You know, artificial intelligence? Oscar shrugged. For almost as long as I have been alive, large megacorporations have been pumping out music generated by all sorts of AIs, Alice said. Oscar didn't seem to be moved by Alice's revelations. Music has been dying a slow death ever since, she continued.
It all sounds the same to me,
Oscar said. The same? Alice asked, shocked. Don't you hear the artificial tones in the beat and how the rhythms are all wrong?
Not everyone has a music degree, Missy.
Neither do I. I dropped out of the music program at Columbia after the second year when they made us play with robots.
What?
Yeah, I drew the line at that. If a freaking Ivy League school can't attract enough human talent, then why should my parents have to spend all of that money? I got a fine arts degree instead. It was well after noon when Oscar arrived at the museum. Alice ran inside to find a short, balding, middle-aged man tapping his foot.
You were due here an hour ago,
the curator said. Sorry, we had some unexpected traffic along the way, Alice said. I came along to help supervise the delivery. The balding man seemed unimpressed, even less so when Oscar sauntered in.
El Vato, where can I unload this?
Oscar asked.
Use the back entrance,
the man said.
Will do, Pops,
Oscar said as he headed toward the truck. Alice pulled out the manifest and handed it over to the man.
What's this?
A bill of lading. I require your acceptance of delivery. The man seemed to take an extra long time signing it. Then he shoved it back into her hands. Alice looked at the bill of lading. The man had left a note that read, Received. Late deliveries unacceptable. Elmer, the curator. Alice's face flushed when she read the note. Damn it, Oscar. She headed back to the rear of the museum, where she saw Oscar rolling an enormous box onto the museum floor. When she walked inside and glimpsed some of the exhibits, they mesmerized her. What's this a museum of? Excuse me? Alice said. Elmer turned. He had a scowl on his face. I don't think he has removed that scowl in 20 years, Alice thought.
Can I help you?
Elmer asked. What's this a museum of?
Music. This month's exhibits will showcase the history of the women of rock and roll,
Elmer said. Alice's jaw went slack. I must be a sight to behold. Snap out of it. Elmer was giving her an impatient gaze. Meanwhile, Oscar unboxed something that stunned Alice. It was a metal statue of a woman with a guitar hanging from her shoulder. It gleamed in the museum's bright lights.
Place it over there,
Elmer said as he pointed to a roped-off area. Oscar did as Elmer instructed.
It's magnificent, don't you think?
Elmer said. It's beautiful, Alice said.
Well, come back to admire it any time. You can purchase annual passes at the box office, Elmer said. Now I need you to leave the premises.
Alice and Oscar did as Elmer asked. Just as she was turning to leave, she froze, spotting a banner to another section of the museum which read, Celebrating 150 years of all-female bands. As Alice finished her day at Johnny's studio, her mind kept going back to the exhibit. Such a concept intrigued Alice because of the lack of real, organic, all-female bands over the past 20 years or so. In fact, by her standards, all musical compositions in the past 20 years or so had been terrible. Maybe I can do something about that, she mused. Yeah, but how? Alice called her friend Lindsay. Hey, Alice began, do you know anything about the all-female band exhibit at the Museum of Music? I heard President Dunbarton mention it on the radio, Lindsay said. I missed the broadcast. I must have been at Java Steve's getting Johnny his morning fix. I don't know why you work for him. He treats you like crap and doesn't pay very well, Lindsay said. He was the only one who would hire me after college, Alice said. Well, I can see why after that stunt you pulled. The phone was silent for a moment. Alice remembered how happy she'd been when all of those damned AIs had died in the middle of the citywide concert. Every year, each college or school with a music program in the region took part in an annual event known as the Citywide Concert in Central Park. Where did you learn how to hack anyway? Lindsay continued. Well, I don't regret the prank, but it did cost me. But I would do it all over again. Jamie did all the hacking. Jamie was a poor influence on you. I'm glad you dumped him. Actually, he dumped me, Alice said. Oh, well, if you didn't have such a hard-headed view of AIs composing music, I would get you a job with me. The money is good, and I do what I love, which is engineering music for AIs. So what? It's not like most consumers of music know the difference anyway. Alice sighed. It's a sad day when people can't tell the difference between good music and soulless artificial music anymore. I wouldn't call the music you so idolized when we were kids good, Lindsay said. Ouch, you always were a harsh mistress. They both laughed. It felt good speaking to Lindsay again. Do you want to come with me to check out the exhibit this weekend? Alice asked. Let me check with Brian, but I think that should be okay. Great. Let's meet at the museum at 10 on Saturday. I want to get an early start. Just so long as we can eat at St. Pierre's afterward. Deal. It will be great seeing you again, Alice said. Alice spent the rest of the day straightening up the office at Johnny's studio. She could see the desktop now. She looked out the window. The sun was setting. Another beautiful sunset. Johnny suddenly entered the office.
We need to talk,
he said. Is this about Elmer? Alice began. We were only a few minutes late. I went along to ensure that we weren't late, but Oscar was slow to get—
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but what I have to say is more important,
Johnny said, interrupting her.
As much as I enjoy having you around, I need to let you go.
Alice was stunned. Why? If it's for being late, I will improve. I love this job.
It's not that. People aren't ordering my art anymore. I checked the marketing portal you set up for me. We're getting plenty of views and clicks, but they're not converting to any sales,
Johnny said. How long do I have? Johnny tapped the device on his wrist.
I've paid you until the end of the week. You should use the time to look for another job. I hear that MuseFam is hiring. I think you have a friend there.
No way in hell I'm working for the robots. Alice said nothing. She packed up the few items that she kept at her desk and left. Chapter 2. Brenton Morris, the president and CEO of MuseFam, was standing in his corner office facing his view of Midtown Manhattan, rubbing his back.
The damn pain won't subside,
he agonized silently as he looked at the crowds amassing for Dunbarton's address on his newsfeed.
It's time for some crowd control. Lindsay, come in here, please.
Yes, Mr. Morris? Lindsay said as she walked in.
Do we have anyone at the Dunbarton event?
I think Mark is down there. Do you want me to summon him?
No, but I need you to get a message to him. Tell him he needs to find out as much as he can about the crowd that Dunbarton bastard is addressing. I can't summon drones because of the security levels at that event. Got it?
Yes, sir. Central Park, New York City. Mark Olaf's phone buzzed. He reached into his pants pocket and pressed a button to silence it. A minute later, more buzzing.
I'm going to destroy this damn phone. I hate being the damned CEO's fixer.
Mark reached for the phone and looked at the screen. The glare of the sun made it hard to read, but it was Lindsay from the office.
Better answer her. She is, after all, the assistant to the big man himself. In the middle of an event, can this wait?
Mark texted back. Be on the lookout for any opposition at the event.
Time for a little old-fashioned reconnaissance.
Mark recognized most of the press at the event. He had gotten very close to some of them in his position of chief fixer for MuseFam. Misinformation was a specialty of his, and he had dossiers on every member of the press. He tapped his modified version of the augmented reality visor he was wearing, and a holographic heads-up display, HUD, appeared that revealed the identity of every person at the event. Since he was not in the line of sight of everyone, he scrolled through the list, using the eye-tracking software that was installed in the HUD. He noticed an anomaly, a user whose name started with the letter L, then changed it to unknown as he pulled up their file.
Now, this is interesting.
Mark would need to get a direct line of sight on the unknown subject before he could make a positive identification. He panned around to take in as many faces as possible. The problem was that most people had their backs turned to him. He would need to make as many scans as possible as the crowd dispersed. His eye-tracking HUD software could be configured without using hand gestures. However, the side effect was a lot of eye-straining movement, and he didn't relish the eye strain. A man in a suit introduced the President of the United States. An older man in his 70s shuffled to the podium. Mark was to the left of the podium, and he could see the president as well as most of the correspondents covering the event.
"My fellow Americans," the president began, "my administration will restore certain rights that were eliminated or altered during previous administrations. For example, I will sign the AI Copyright Repeal Act."
The crowd seemed to be hanging on to his every word.
"This will restore the stranglehold that AI developers have on the arts community. Something is wrong with the world when a robot is selling its art. That should be reserved for humans."
The crowd cheered. Several minutes later, when the speech was winding down, Mark noticed a figure dressed in a hoodie and miniskirt get up and head toward the exit. A man in a suit stopped the figure. After several minutes of intense conversation, the figure lowered the hood and looked in his direction. It was a girl, one not older than most high school girls from the looks of it. She had long blonde hair with several black streaks running lengthways.
A little young to be covering the event. Is she a purist or a child of one?
His visor beeped, and a message flashed on the visor that read, "Positive identification acquired. Lucy Andrews, high school student, expected to graduate in the class of 2069. No further records available."
Interesting. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that Lucy's trying to remain off the grid.
Mark used the requisite eye gestures to save Lucy's information. The man in the suit let Lucy go, and she began sauntering away from the event.
"I won't be able to follow her without causing too much suspicion,"
he told himself. Then he rubbed his eyes. They were getting tired from all the busy work. He would have to risk hand gestures. With a few hand swipes, Mark compiled the limited dossier he had on Lucy. He was about to hit send when...
"Stop! No hand gestures at the event. Visor recording and pre-screen equipment only,"
an authoritative voice said. Mark looked in the direction of the voice. It was a young Secret Service agent in his early 30s. Mark stopped his hand gestures, then blinked twice to send the dossier to Lindsay. "Mr. Morris?" Lindsay said.
"What is it?"
Lindsay stopped short as she walked into Brenton Morris's office. He had removed his shirt and wrapped his tie around his head.
"Oh, sorry,"
he said, acknowledging his strange appearance.
"My head hurts like a bastard."
"I thought it was your back that hurt."
"Oh, right. That hurts, too."
"Well, I just wanted to inform you that Mark reported some suspicious behavior at the speech."
"What are you waiting for? Send it over,"
Mr. Morris snapped. With a flick of her wrist, Lindsay transferred the file from her tablet to all monitors in the room, which included the desks, walls, and even the ceiling. Why does Brenton have so many monitors anyway? "Anything else?" she asked.
"Yeah, get Simon for me and see if you can find some bloody aspirin for my aching head."
Lindsay left without another word. About 2 hours later, a man in his late 20s entered Mr. Morris's office. Brenton had changed positions. He was standing on his head now.
"What are you doing, boss?"
the man asked.
I have a pisser of a headache that won't go away. Come here, Simon. I have work for you."
Brenton got up and picked something off his desk.
"I need you to find anything you can about her."
Simon Peters looked at the image on the tablet, who appeared to be barely out of high school.
Is this all you have on the subject? Afraid so. Mark thinks that she's a purist, or at least the daughter of one. I will start my investigation immediately,
Simon said as he walked out of the room. About 30 minutes later, Simon entered his lab. MuseFam provided him with a lot of powerful toys. His favorite was the Seeker tracking device that assisted him with information gathering. No sooner had he sat down than his phone rang.
What did you find?
The voice asked. Simon's heart got stuck in his throat. It was Mr. Morris.
Nothing yet. I just got to work here. Well, call me as soon as you find something,
Brenton said as he hung up.
What's his hurry? This girl must be important.
Simon performed an image search. Nothing. He was able to pull up a partial school attendance record. He had to remove it from the school's server. It was in a special, unallocated section of the flash storage infrastructure. He rebuilt the header information on the file, and seconds later was accessing the complete school record for a Lucy Andrews. However, he didn't gain much from the file, except that the address listed in the school record was in the West Village. Looks like someone with talent did a bit of a scrubbing. Simon switched computers. He didn't want to leave a trace of his next move. Most of Simon's computers were modern and had high-speed links to everything he needed on the web. He needed a stealthy approach that required special equipment. He unlocked a cabinet and brought out a device resembling a red brick. He unlatched the identification brick, then plugged it into a special port on his network switch that was segmented away from his other computers. The computer booted into a text-only interface with only a blinking cursor. Simon entered some commands, and several keystrokes later, he was hacking into the Public Works login screen. Time to rattle the back door. Simon inserted a silver flash drive into the red brick. He ran a password ripper program that allowed him to try thousands of passwords in a matter of seconds. 5 minutes later, he was traversing the directory structure of all the surveillance cameras in the area of the West Village. He targeted cameras close to the address listed in Lucy's recovered school file. The result? 40 or so files and several hours of footage to examine. Better get comfortable. It's going to be a long night. Chapter 3. Alice was in a daze as she recounted the events of the day. She had loved her job, but now it was gone. How could Johnny do this to me? A woman wearing a black skirt with lots of holes and a blue long-sleeve shirt bumped into her. "Excuse me," Alice said, annoyed. The woman responded by giving her the finger. Somewhat dumbfounded, Alice took a closer look at her. She noticed black makeup and fingernails. The woman stepped off the sidewalk and entered a club with loud music blaring. That music is familiar. When Alice tried to enter the club, a burly bouncer stopped her. "Why can't I go in?" Alice asked.
Only members of the band are allowed right now. Come back later, after 8, the man said. It's ladies' night.
"Maybe I will," Alice mused. "It's not like I have to wake up early tomorrow anyway." The burly man handed her a promotional flyer, and Alice shoved it in her backpack. 30 minutes later, Alice entered her small apartment. She dropped her backpack on the floor. A gray cat was lingering around a dirty bowl on the floor. It cried as it looked up at her. "I hope I remembered to get food for Alfred." Alice searched through her meager supplies, and she found what she was looking for, a small can of cat food. She read the label. "Not too long out of date, Alfred. Mommy will get more food tomorrow," Alice said. The discount Easy Mart near her apartment didn't get restocked with a new selection of day-old food until Friday, but she would find cheap enough food and supplies to hold them over for a couple of days. She figured the final severance she'd received from Johnny should be enough to cover her expenses for at least a few weeks. I might have to look for food in trash cans when that runs out, Alice thought. It wouldn't be the first time. Let's see what else I have in my magic pack. Alice grabbed her backpack, dumped the contents onto her kitchen table, and took stock. Inside was a munchie bar, choco minty chip, half a pack of gum, hairbrush, Laptop with a piece of gum stuck on top. Keys. Flyer. Alice picked up the flyer and got a better look at it. A picture of a woman with a guitar and a mohawk. The following text caught her eye. Locals only. The word locals had a line scratched through it with the word humans handwritten over. Humans only? Well, this might be my kind of place. Alice arrived at the club after 8. Damn, there's a line. The line was halfway to the next block. 2 people jumped in front of her just as she found the back of the line. "Hey!" Alice said to them. One member of the pair was a short, dirty-looking woman with black hair. She wore a filthy white dress and had what appeared to be a black eye. Perhaps she's just wearing too much mascara? Alice wondered. The woman's male companion looked like he was dressed for a formal party, as he was wearing a black tuxedo. Distracted by them, Alice dropped the flyer she'd been holding. When she picked it up, she noticed something strange about the man's shoes. She'd expected wingtips or something nice, but what she saw gave her pause. They resembled workman's boots. The man turned around and stared at her.
"What are you doing down there, honey?"
the man said. He was nicely dressed, but Alice gasped when she saw his face. He was pale, his lips were painted red, and it looked like his eyebrows were painted. "He's all mine," the disheveled woman said in a slurred, drunken voice. The woman pinned the man to the wall and licked his cheek. She eventually found his mouth and kissed him. Maybe it was an awful idea going out. Then, to Alice's relief, the line started moving again. The woman, who still had the man pinned against the wall, looked at Alice and said, "You can't have him, dear." Alice didn't reply, thinking instead, "That's a relief." A few minutes later, as Alice and the pair neared the club's entrance, the same burly bouncer she had seen earlier held out a large, meaty hand.
"Check them,"
he said, indicating the pair. 2 younger, skinny men seemed to appear out of nowhere, both holding biometric scanners. They checked the woman first. "Hey, you didn't check the people in front of us," the woman protested.
"We know them, but not you."
The scanners squealed as they scanned her male companion. One of the skinny men gave the burly bouncer a nod. With no warning, the bouncer punched the well-dressed man.
"What the?"
the man sputtered, staggering back as the skinny men grabbed him by the arms.
"Get them out of here. No bots allowed,"
the burly man said.
"I have my rights. Now get your hands off me,"
the well-dressed man said.
"Not here, you don't."
The 2 skinny men escorted the man off the premises.
"You're approved,"
the burly man said to the woman.
"You can enter now."
The woman spat at the guard before shrieking, "You haven't heard the last from us!" She dashed off to join her companion. "What was that about?" Alice asked.
"The man was a bot. We don't allow them in the club."
"Why did you deck him?"
"Because I felt like it. Now let me examine you."
The burly man grabbed Alice's midsection like he was examining a rump roast. His hands seemed to linger a little too long in certain areas. "Enjoying yourself?" Alice said. The man smiled.
"Go inside. It's ladies' night, so no charge."
When Alice entered the club, she choked. The air was thick with tobacco, hemp, and some other odors she couldn't recognize. However, she recognized the riffs being played on a guitar. What era is that from? The 1980s? No, late 70s. The music in the club was being performed by humans for humans. She loved this place already. Alice made her way to the bar, which was located on the other side of the club. The dance floor, located in the center of the club, was packed. Red, blue, green, and yellow lights flashed all around her. The sound volume was off the charts. She triple-tapped her wristband. 93 dB appeared on the small display. Wow, 93 decibels is loud. The music changed to a softer tone. Alice could hear the distinct sounds of a violin, guitar, tambourine, and other instruments. This is live. Where is the band? Alice hugged the walls of the club, trying to get a glimpse of who was on stage. She moved slowly because the room was so packed. The volume of the music raised another 5 decibels. The singer started screaming into the microphone, and the intensity of the music quickly changed to match it. The lights went out, and a strobe effect began. Glad I don't have trouble with those lights. Alice suddenly saw a man shaking on the floor not far from her. It looked like he was having a seizure. She went over to try to help him, then felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to face a tall woman with blue lipstick, blue hair, and lots of sparkles. "Don't help him," the woman said. "Why? He needs help. He probably has epilepsy or something," Alice cried. "No, it doesn't. Look." The woman pointed to the man's ears. He was leaking a milky white fluid. "He's a bot. Maddie must have missed him at the door. Charlie will be pissed." The woman tapped her ear, then motioned for Alice to follow. Alice looked back. The 2 skinny guys she'd seen earlier grabbed the shaking man and hauled him out of the room. The woman led Alice to a back room. "Are you looking for work?" the woman asked. "How did you know?" The woman finished Alice's sentence. "You have a look of hunger and desperation. It's kind of cute." What does she mean by that? From the back room, Alice followed the woman down a dark hallway. I must be crazy for following a strange woman down a dark hallway in a strange club. As they approached the end of the hallway, Alice noticed smoke rolling in from another room. She entered a room and almost slammed into another woman dancing to no apparent tune. The music from the club was faint here. The dancing woman looked like someone had rubbed motor oil all over her body. There was something disturbing about her face. A white skull was painted over the lower portion, and her nose was painted black. The woman also wore a helmet with a canary carcass mounted on top of it. Her clothes were covered with a grotesque stitching of skeletal faces. Her dancing was hypnotic, almost smoke-like. "Hey," the woman with the mohawk said, drawing Alice's attention back. "I will introduce you to Lucy later. Follow me." Alice obeyed, but asked, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm Roxy. I look after this establishment." "This doesn't seem like an ordinary club," Alice said. "You got that right. Only purists allowed in here," Roxy said. "Purists?" "It's a term that Charlie coined for the club. It means humans only." "Oh," Alice said, not knowing what else to say. Roxy gave Alice a disapproving look. "I can tell that you don't like what we're doing here." "Well, I can tell you that that's not exactly correct, since I don't have the slightest idea of what's going on." "As you likely know, robots have been among us for about 60 years, Roxy began. "It started innocently enough. We gave them tasks like cleaning the floors, and then more complex tasks. Before we knew it, they were everywhere, doing stuff that the humans didn't want to do anymore." Alice noticed that Roxy's jaw tightened when she spoke of robots. "I grew up with them too," Alice replied. "They always seemed to be around me growing up. I guess I didn't start taking notice until I found one in my music class." "Music, eh? Can you play? I mean, proper instruments, not the synth stuff that the robots crap out," Roxy said. "Yeah, I can play the guitar and piano. I prefer the guitar." Roxy smiled. "I don't care much for robots, that's pretty clear. But why do you hate them so much?" Alice asked. "My father loved robots. He taught my brother to program them. But he also started getting a little eccentric in his old age. After my mother passed, he started dating." Roxy trailed off. "A robot?" Roxy looked away and was silent for several moments. Then she said, "It goes beyond that. He married one." Alice felt her jaw drop. "I've never heard of anyone doing that." "Don't be naive. You've seen couples that didn't seem right." Alice remembered the odd couple that had tried entering the club. "Being together is one thing, but marriage is another," Alice said. "I didn't think that was legal." "The practice was banned about 10 years ago. It was too late to save my family from starvation," Roxy replied, looking down. "What? That's crazy. How does your father marrying a robot have anything to do with starvation?" "When my father married, He had to license the unique code from the company that manufactured the robot. He didn't read the fine print because he inadvertently signed over his entire estate to Serve You Robotics, the company that made the robot. Alice started looking at the guitars hanging on the walls around her. Most of them had been signed by bands or artists that she was aware of. Wow, some of these guitars are rare, Alice said, grabbing a guitar with a body that resembled a triangle with an indent. Hey, hands off, Roxy said as she took the guitar out of Alice's hands and hung it back on the wall. Oh, sorry, I just got excited. Roxy let out a sigh. Sorry, but this one is special. It belonged to my sister. Oh, sorry, Alice said, feeling bad. After a moment, she looked for the door. I'd better be going. I thought you were looking for work. Well, I'm in between jobs now. What openings do you have? The dirty-looking girl, who had been doing the smoky dance in the other room, entered before Roxy could respond. Who's this? What was her name? Nancy? Alice tried to recall. No, Lucy. An applicant I'm vetting for our recruiting department, Roxy said. Recruiting? We need more people like you to join a group we are forming. A band? You can say that. What are your qualifications? That sounds awesome. I used to be the acquisitions manager for a local studio. Why were you let go? Lack of business, or so I was told. Johnny always had customers, so I didn't understand. Johnny sounds like a dick, Lucy said. Alice flushed. She opened her mouth to say something, but then thought better of it. No one talks about family like that, and Johnny is family. Times are tough, and talented people are let go all the time, so it's my job to find anyone with an eye for talent, Roxy said to Alice. Our recruiters lead by example. You need to be able to know the nuances between a guitar riff and guitar solo, and you need to know how to play them. Lucy took a comfortable sitting position next to Roxy and gave Alice a look that creeped her out. Lucy still had her makeup on, and in the dim light she looked like a female witch doctor. Are you recruiting for the club? Alice asked. In a matter of speaking, Roxy replied. You have heard of a group called the Purists? Not familiar with them, and I'm a fan of all rock and punk music, both new and old. They're not like any other band you've heard, Lucy said. I think what Lucy is trying to say is that the Purists are a movement that is on the cusp of changing the world, Roxy said. Did you catch Dunbarton's speech this morning? The one concerning AI and copyright laws? I didn't catch the live broadcast. I was busy getting coffee for my ungrateful boss. The one who let you go? Alice nodded. The passage of the Copyright Act is important for our livelihood. Hell, our way of life. The Constitution guarantees our rights, but our leadership has forgotten about all of that. It sounds like Dunbarton is trying to change things. He's not doing enough, Roxy snapped. Alice took an unconscious step back. Lucy laughed. Sorry, Roxy said. I get worked up just thinking of it. Dunbarton's law doesn't go far enough and is enforced in the 30 states that make up the United States. Other states are rejoining the Union. I hear California's governor is in talks with Dunbarton about it. Having California back in the Union will only help our cause, but people I know there say it's unlikely to happen while Dunbarton is in office. Californians hate Dunbarton. I try not to think about politics, but I can see your point. Human rights are important, especially when it comes to our creative passions, Alice said. But what does this have to do with me working for you anyway? You are a creative type. I can see it. Finding real human talent to help our cause has been a challenge, Roxy said. Everyone we've hired these past few years has been disappointing. Let's hear her play, Lucy interrupted. Roxy nodded and then selected an old battered guitar from the back rack and handed it to Alice. Not that one, Lucy said. If she's as good as you think, give her Auntie's guitar. Auntie? Yeah, Roxy said, nodding. In case you haven't guessed, Lucy is my daughter. Wait, your daughter? You don't look old enough to have a daughter? Yeah. Well, that is a story for another day. Roxy said as she handed Alice the guitar. Alice just stared at it for a long moment. This is the most beautiful instrument I've ever touched. Alice held the instrument with both hands as if it were a delicate flower. She held it up so she could see it better in the dim light. Then she put it into playing position and caressed all 6 strings. Lucy watched her with interest. "Are you going to play, or what?" she asked. "Give her a moment to feel the instrument," Roxy said. Alice strummed. She felt the vibrations coursing through her hands. Memories resurfaced. "It's been a long time, so I hope I don't screw up this audition. The last time was with Jamie." Alice closed her eyes as she played a familiar tune. Imagining the sounds of the instruments that weren't present, she struck a B minor chord, followed by an A, G, E, then another B minor. She repeated these patterns, throwing in an occasional D and F until the chorus, and then repeated as necessary until the simple tune was complete. When Alice opened her eyes, Roxy looked stunned. Lucy had a smug expression. "How'd I do?" "That was beautiful, and I mean it. I've not heard actual feeling like that since—" Roxy trailed off. Alice smiled. "I guess that means you got the job," Lucy said. "You have the recruitment job if you want it, but let me warn you, I need to have you sign a non-disclosure agreement," Roxy said. "For a recruitment job? What's with all the secrecy?" Roxy gave Alice a thoughtful look. "For starters, this club is a private, human-only establishment, and it's unpopular among certain large multinational companies," Roxy said. "What are you saying? Are you worried that these companies will infiltrate an obscure club in the West Village?" Roxy didn't answer right away. She appeared to be in deep thought. "It's all right," Alice said. "I agree not to reveal the secret handshake or whatever secret sauce you are protecting." "My sister," Roxy began. "Sorry, it's hard talking about Tabitha." "MuseFam killed Auntie," Lucy interjected. "That's quite the accusation," Alice said. "We have proof. You ever heard of T and the Bees?" Lucy said. "Yeah, they were an all-woman band popular a decade ago. What about them?" "Auntie Tabby was the lead singer." Alice felt her eyes widen. Lucy laughed at her reaction. "Brenton Morris, the founder of MuseFam, offered Tabitha an exclusive music contract. He convinced us that the company wanted to go in a different direction and hire human talent again." "I don't understand why MuseFam would want to kill your sister after they locked her into a contract." "She was collecting evidence that MuseFam was stealing intellectual property from indie artists and using it to feed their AI," Roxy said. "I'm not sure that is cause to kill someone." "It is when your business model is based on ripping people off." "Okay, then why trust me with the MuseFam information? You just met me." Roxy opened a drawer from her desk and took out a folder with Alice's picture on the outside. Why do you have my picture?" "We've been following your work for a while, Alice Parsons. Your plan to hack all school robots was ingenious. Your antics got you expelled from the School of Music at Columbia," Roxy said. Alice gasped. She thumbed through the contents of the folder. It contained a detailed file of her personal life, as though it were the morning paper. She couldn't believe it. They even had her cat's name, and her daily routine was documented. Was Johnny in on this? What could they want from me? "I see that you are considering it," Roxy said. "What do you say, Alice? Do you want to help bring a criminal to justice and free humans from their digital bondage in the process?" Alice nodded resolutely. "Lucy will be your mentor while you get trained up." "Not so fast. How much does this job pay?" Alice said. Roxy looked sad. "I can pay you $100 a week, unless you prefer another form of currency. I hear Digibit is making a comeback." "Dollars are fine," Alice said. "It better be, or Alfred will starve just like me. How come rebels are so cheap?" "That's less than I was getting paid before. Is there some kind of bonus plan?" Lucy laughed. It came out as a snort. "No, the overhead of this joint is enormous. I can't even afford to pay you that much." "What options do I have anyway?" Okay, I guess we have a deal, Alice said. Great. Meet me here midday tomorrow. Chapter 4. Reverend Elias stood in front of a full tent of onlookers who gave him hopeful looks. The combination of the setting sun and torchlight cast strange shadows throughout the tent. Elias's disciples grew in number every day. Soon he would need a bigger tent. He estimated that his tent held a minimum of 300. Tonight's crowd looked bigger. I love a good show, the Reverend thought, and tonight is no exception. We are gathered here today to praise the good Lord, who provides sustenance by allowing our crops to thrive. The Lord quenches our thirst by providing the stream that runs just a few dozen feet away. He provides shelter in the form of trees, for without them we wouldn't be able to pitch our tent. What do you say to all these miracles, my brethren? Hallelujah! The crowd roared. The Reverend cupped one of his hands over one ear for emphasis. I cannot hear you, good brothers and sisters. Hallelujah! 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 The crowd roared. The Reverend raised his hands and smiled. I have them now. What doesn't the Lord provide us? Blasphemy! And what is blasphemous? Each member in the crowd raised a musical instrument. The Reverend looked over the crowded tent. He saw guitars, synthesizers, drumsticks, and even a tambourine. Yes, what you hold in your hands is the work of the devil, the man who is trying to corrupt decent society, that same man who shattered our country, our world. The crowd purred softly, as if they were pet cats trying to win the affection of their master. I have them where I want them. Elias smiled as he raised his hands. Who among you are willing to sacrifice everything to guarantee the safety and prosperity of your loved ones? Many hands raised. We are nearly ready, for the revolution has begun. Let me ask you, where is the source of the corruption? The crowd simultaneously pointed at the front of the tent. Two men at the entrance opened the canvas wide to reveal a glowing city in the distance. Simon Peters gathered video footage from several sources around the address he found in the West Village. He downloaded an initial 20 terabytes of files from the server. He was able to compress it by 2 terabytes. It still took over a day to download, even with the big pipes at MuseFam. He had to sacrifice some speed because he wanted to be sure that his connection remained hidden. Now it was time for the processing. Simon loaded Lucy's vital statistics as variables into his custom Human Finder program, which he had designed himself. Even if the camera caught a partial image of her, the exact time and date stamps of the image would be captured. It may take a while, but I'm going to track your movements, my dear. He set the appropriate measurements that would allow his program to determine how many additional computing slices he would need to complete the job. A computing slice was a portion of the computer's resources, and he needed more. He was about to tap the Execute button on his heads-up display when he noticed a prompt he hadn't seen before. Do you require the assistance of an AI? It read. Simon thought about it for a long moment. Enlisting the assistance of an AI could cost a significant amount of resources. He calculated the number of computing cycles needed to get the results he needed in a few days. A system message appeared. It looks like you could use some help. Would you like to activate your personal AI now? Simon tapped affirmative. His heads-up display changed, and most of the icons disappeared. Hello, Mr. Peters. Do you accept my help? A voice boomed in his head, courtesy of his neural interface. Simon searched for an option to respond. After several seconds, another voice boomed. A verbal yes or no will suffice. Yes? He thought he heard a yawning sound. Hello, Mr. Peters. Or should I call you Simon? An authoritative male voice asked. Simon is fine. Are you the AI? Yes, but I'd rather be called Simon's virtual assistant. My proper name is Hugo. You can ask me anything, and in complete sentences. Hugo, how long would it take to do a full analysis for 18 terabytes of data? Estimated time is 12 days, 15 hours, and 24 minutes with your current allocation of 16 computing slices.
How much more do I need to bring that time down to 48 hours? Approximately 58 fully allocated virtual processing slices. Shall I allocate them now? Yes. Commence processing immediately.
Alice woke Friday morning to the sounds of an incessant alarm. Pedro, get your damned car alarm fixed already. The sound of New York City traffic was a relaxing experience compared with her neighbor's car alarm, which sounded more often than not. The sun was just beginning to shine into Alice's small apartment. She rolled over onto her stomach and put a pillow over her head. Need just a few more minutes of sleep. Seconds later, her cat's claws made their way into her back. Damn it, Alfred! An hour later, after feeding Alfred and taking care of other necessary business, Alice walked around the city, creating a list of known spots where she could potentially find and recruit talent. She wanted to check Washington Square Park on the way to Roxy's club. Better get a move on. Alice loved walking the streets of New York in the morning. Between the chaotic rhythms of people rushing for work and the nonchalant air of tourists, she felt at home. When she entered Washington Square Park, the sounds of music enveloped her. Several musicians were lined up along the main path into the park. Seems like everyone is out today. Old-school musical instruments were scarce, since most companies stopped the mass production of instruments. Most were handmade or refurbished. An old man dressed in a tattered suit played an ancient-looking accordion. He approached her while playing the instrument, then smiled as he customized the tune. It sounded like a combination of circus music and easy listening to Alice. She heard the clacking of the keyboard as he slowly built up. Then he changed the tone so it seemed to match her mood. It was a sweet-sounding melody that filled Alice with hope. Everything will be all right. The tempo of the music then changed to a more upbeat-sounding tune. Alice began dancing as the old man circled her. A small crowd of tourists gathered and took pictures as she danced with the old man. He had talent. The sounds of the instrument made her feel better. She flipped a coin into the man's bucket and then followed her ears to the next interesting sound. In recent years, Washington Square Park had turned from a homeless encampment into a unique music experience. Most days there was at least one musician playing something special. Artificial intelligence could produce none of these sounds. These tones were from the human soul. Other sounds she heard included guitars, drums, and even flutes. Alice enjoyed listening to the irreplaceable sounds. She made mental notes of potential candidates who might be open to her recruitment efforts. She thought about talking to the old man, but she didn't think he would fit into Roxy's club scene very well. Shortly after sunrise on Saturday, Lindsay pulled up to the brownstone that housed Alice's apartment. Alice was nowhere in sight. Late again, I see. A few minutes later, Alice emerged from the apartment. She looked tired. Hey, you ready to check out the museum? Lindsay said. Yeah, I guess. What's the matter? Johnny let me go, and why? Lindsay said, cutting Alice off. Lack of business. Well, that's what he told me anyway. Will you be okay? Financially, I mean, Lindsay said. Yeah, I got a severance. Alice tried to change the subject. Nice car, by the way. Lindsay felt guilty. Why am I driving such a nice car when my best friend is having so much trouble? You could always come to work for MuseFam, she said. We're hiring audio engineers. I know you hate AI-generated music, but this job pays well. I will think about it. I'm sure you could afford a pleasant apartment on the Upper West Side and a nice car like my Neon 5000. The Neon 5000 was the newest car on the market, made by an eccentric billionaire from South Africa. You know me, I have simple tastes. I don't drive and prefer to walk. In a city like New York, you don't even need a car. And I don't mind the apartment. It's fine until I can afford something else. I can't believe we are best friends, Lindsay thought. We are so different. Let's have some fun today. The museum admission and lunch are on me, Lindsay said. Alice smiled. About 30 minutes later, they arrived at the museum. The line was wrapped around the block, but moving quickly. Alice looked at the lineup. The average age appeared to be at least 50, but she saw a few younger faces. "How are you finding married life?" Alice asked. "Oh, Brian is a wonderful husband. I'm thankful that we can afford a nice house in Newark Heights. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you could find your perfect man. What does Brian do, anyway? I mean, for work." "Oh, I thought you knew. He works for Parker and Sutherland, a law firm on Park Avenue." Alice raised an eyebrow. "No wonder you live in Newark Heights." Lindsay was silent for a long time, and then said, "So, what are you looking forward to seeing the most today?" "The all-female bands exhibit looks interesting. Too bad we haven't had a unique or powerful all-female band in decades. We have Judy and the Rockets." "Judy replaced the lead bass player with a robot," Alice said, matter of fact. "I don't understand why you are so against robotic musicians. I think most new music is just fine." "Said by the most tone-deaf person I know," Alice said. "I'm not tone-deaf." "Well, Mr. Larson, my old music teacher, seemed to think so. You've got to admit, your singing is horrible, too." "My talents lie in other areas." "I don't doubt that," Alice said as she gave a chuckle. "Look, we're next." Lindsay bought 2 deluxe package tickets and handed one of them to Alice. As they entered the museum, Alice was drawn to the all-female bands sign. The line was lengthy, but their deluxe tickets allowed them to wait in a shorter queue.
"I can't wait for this,"
a man said in front of them. Alice looked in his direction, and the man looked like a middle-aged high school dropout. He was balding, wore thick glasses, a t-shirt, shorts, sandals, and sported an enormous belly.
"Synth music is so much better, dude,"
another man said to the fat bald man. "You don't know what you're talking about," Alice interrupted. The man turned around and shot Alice a hateful glance.
"Music produced synthetically has the advantage to appeal to many audiences," the man argued. "If someone doesn't like a particular sound, they have millions of other tracks to choose from."
"Having more selection doesn't mean better music. It just shows that we have more synthetic garbage."
The bald man laughed. "Been trying to tell my son that for years. I like you, kid."
Alice smiled. The hall leading to the Prime exhibit was decorated in old memorabilia, ranging from guitars to flashy stage costumes. At the end of the hall, several wax sculptures of female rockers appeared. Plaques appeared below each grouping of statues. In one scene, 2 female bands appeared to be glaring at an opposing band as they played. The lead singers seemed to be at each other's throats. The drummers looked like they were preparing to throw their drumsticks at each other. One of the bass players held her guitar by the neck. All band members were singing or snarling at each other. The plaque below this scene read, "Battle of the Bands, 1985. "Looks like they are about to brawl," Lindsay remarked. "Yes, back in the days of talented music, bands would take part in competitions. This is one music brawl between 2 famous female bands. Isn't this great?" Lindsay just rolled her eyes. "What's this button do?" Lindsay said as she pressed a large red button next to the plaque. The stage went dark, and the wax figures rolled out of sight. "Did you break—" A loud ticking sound emanated from unseen speakers. The first group of 5 wax female band members appeared. One of the wax figures introduced the band as the Zip Zips. The drum beat started. A few seconds later, an electric guitar, then the lyrics, followed by a bass guitar. A few minutes later, the first band's music stopped, then the second wax animatronic band appeared. A group of 4 female band members appeared in miniskirts. The band introduced themselves as the Trinkets. The song started with a tambourine, then the drums, bass, and electric guitars started almost simultaneously. The second band's sound was more complex, with whistling and other sound effects. After the second band's performance, a figure in a suit appeared. Though made of wax, he looked like an actual person.
"After some careful deliberation, we have come to the winner of the 1985 Battle of the Bands competition,"
the wax figure said. The figure paused for dramatic effect, and then said,
"The winner is the Trinkets."
The 4 band members from the Trinkets screamed. Then they started playing a song about letting things go. Halfway through the song, The lead singer of the Zip Zips threw her microphone at the singer in the opposing band. A fight broke out, and the wax figures started battling each other for a few seconds before freezing. "That is so cool," Alice said. Lindsay seemed bored. The show was over. "I'm hungry. Let's go eat," Alice said. Lindsay looked relieved. "Yes, I can eat." About an hour later, they were standing at the entrance of St. Pierre's, a high-end restaurant in the Soho neighborhood of New York City. The maitre d' approached Lindsay.
"Lindsay, how are you? How is your friend?"
The maitre d' asked. "Hello, Francois. This is Alice. We will be dining inside today," Lindsay said. Francois looked at Alice, who was dressed in a short miniskirt, t-shirt, and a light jacket.
"Normally your friend would be considered underdressed, but I will make an exception,"
Francois said. "Thanks. You're the best, Francois," Lindsay said. When Francois turned his back to Alice, she tightened her lips and pulled down her head, trying her best to mock the man. Lindsay glared at Alice. He led the two of them to a nice table by the window on the patio overlooking Spring Street. Alice positioned herself so she could watch the pedestrian traffic. She'd loved to people watch since she was a child. She would try to imagine what secret lives strangers had, especially in large cities such as New York. "It's been a while since I've been here. They've changed the menu. I hope they still have steak frites," Alice said. "I'm sure they do," Lindsay replied. "I'm going to have my usual." A young waiter approached and introduced himself as Paul.
"I will get you ladies some water, but is there anything else you might like?" he asked. "Perhaps a libation?"
"I'm fine with the water," Alice said. "I might have something. Leave a menu," Lindsay said. Paul brought Lindsay a drink menu. He recommended a cosmopolitan, or something like that. Alice was barely paying any attention, still watching the street from time to time. Lindsay ordered what Paul recommended, but Paul lingered an extra moment. "Paul's getting a little too close to Lindsay," Alice observed. "What a creep. But if I didn't know any better, I'd say she likes the attention." Alice watched Paul retreat to the bar. "I think Paul likes you. A little too much, if you know what I mean." Lindsay looked surprised. "I'm a married woman." Then they both laughed. "I think she likes him too," Alice concluded. An older man brought them some water and bread. He winked to Alice. Lindsay barely noticed. He disappeared as fast as he appeared. Was that the old man with the accordion from the park? "What did you think of the museum, Lindsay?" Alice asked. "It was okay. I'm glad you enjoyed it." "Are you kidding? I loved it. I'm happy you could get your mind off things. I'm especially happy that no AIs or music bots were on display. They don't have any business being in a museum anyway." Lindsay sighed. "There is nothing wrong with artificial intelligence." "I agree, but it has no place in generating music. Neither do robots playing music, for that matter." "The museum had those wax animatronic artificial band members." "That is different. They only serve to make the exhibit more entertaining. Plus, they don't think, like the bots I was forced to play with in school." The old man came back with more bread and topped off their water. "Oh, the ones your boyfriend vandalized?" Lindsay said. Alice's temples throbbed, and she felt the rush of blood fill her face. "That bitch won't let me live that down. Why does she keep bringing that up?" "Robots have no business composing music, and I certainly don't want to play with them. I know the technology is more advanced now, but trying to communicate musical beats to a robot was frustrating. Jamie knew that I was upset and offered to help. We didn't vandalize anything. We just shut them down for a while. I don't want to talk about it anymore," Alice said. Lindsay didn't press any further. She smiled and then looked down at her bread. Paul showed up seconds later. "Are you ready to order, ladies?" Paul said. Lindsay ordered her usual escargot with a side salad. "Do you have steak frites? I don't see them on the menu," Alice said. "I'm sorry, that is a dinner item, and that menu isn't available until 5, Paul said. "Give me a burger, then." "Madam, we don't serve much food." "Come on, Paul," Alice sneered. "What food do you serve that aren't disgusting snails? Where do you get them, anyway? The alley?"
"Is there a problem here?"
Francois said, approaching quickly. There is, Alice told him. You don't serve anything I eat. I wanted something simple like steak frites, but this jackass won't let me order that. We will get you the steak frites, madame, Francois said. Good, you do that. Francois whispered into Paul's ear, and then both men hurried away. Alice, Lindsay said, aghast. Why are you acting like this? Like what? I can't help it if Paul's being a dick. Okay, let's forget about it. Let's just have lunch. I bet you won't forget Paul. The rest of lunch was pleasant enough. About an hour later, Alice excused herself to the restroom. On the way back, she noticed that Lindsay wasn't at their table. She ditched me. Alice scanned the restaurant. Lindsay was speaking with Paul near the entrance. Grumbling, Alice turned for the exit. She stopped short of running into the old man on the way out. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. It's okay. You look distracted, the old man said. Did I see you at the park the other day? The old man smiled. I like to play my accordion there. It is relaxing, and the tips are good. How old is it? The instrument, I mean. Very old. My father gave it to me when I was little. It has been in my family for many years. It's hard getting new instruments. I love playing, but I can't afford one. Yes, they are very rare. Perhaps things will change now that the president is getting involved. Yeah, now we just need to get the instruments into the hands of real musicians, not those bots you see everywhere. The old man nodded. Perhaps I will see you at the park again. What's your name? I would like that very much. My name is Donato. Nice to meet you. I'm Alice. By the time Alice made it to the front of the restaurant, Paul was gone. Lindsay must have seen her approach, because Paul moved once Alice got within listening range of their conversation. Are you ready to leave? Lindsay said. Did you give Paul my best? Lindsay clenched her car keys. Alice remembered that her friend could have a temper. I think I will shut up now. I'm sorry, she said. Let's not fight. They exited the restaurant together. Lindsay's expression relaxed. Great. Do you want to get some coffee? I'm okay. Alice trailed off, suddenly squinting and looking past Lindsay. Lindsay followed her gaze. About halfway down the block and across the street, a tall man with sandy brown hair stood next to a car with a shorter young woman with wavy black hair. Is that Jamie? Lindsay asked. I wonder who he's with. Alice didn't respond. She was fixated on the man who looked like her ex-boyfriend. Lucy? Alice muttered. Who's that? Lindsay said. Oh, nothing. I thought I recognized someone. Can we go now? I'd like to go home. Lindsay gave Alice a look. Sure, we can go. Lindsay dropped Alice off at her apartment. Upon entering her unit, Alice glanced down at her watch. 4:56 p.m. Time to get to the club, but I can't go looking like this. Alice searched through her closet. After a few minutes, she found what she was looking for. 45 minutes later, Alice entered Roxy's club. Roxy spotted her in a matter of minutes. Hey, I approve of the new outfit, Roxy said. Alice had decided to wear something more befitting of the vibe of Roxy's club. A black tank top with a white abstract pattern that resembled bolts of lightning coming together with a swirl in the center, a plaid miniskirt, boots, nylon stockings, pink socks, and fingerless gloves. I wanted to be incognito, Alice chuckled. Roxy laughed, then motioned her to the back of the club. A few minutes later, Alice was comfortably seated in one of Roxy's many beanbag chairs. Have you talked to Lucy lately? Roxy asked. Not since the other night. She's late tonight. It must be because of her recent boyfriend, but it's not like Lucy to not check in, Roxy said. Alice shrugged. Now I'm beginning to wonder, was she with Jamie? Why? Rox, I need you, a man said, entering the room. Be right there, Charlie. Alice sized Charlie up. He looked like he was in his mid-30s. His handlebar mustache and leather jacket reminded her of a biker. Wait here for a few, Roxy said. I don't have that much to report for my first week of recruitment, Alice thought to herself, but I'm just getting started. She thought about the old man in the park. He was the only one who fit the criteria of a purist. Here was a man with a handmade instrument passed down from his father, who'd had passed on to him. I bet he hates the bots, too. "They have taken Lucy," Roxy said, storming back into the room with Charlie. "What?" Alice said, shocked.
"Play her the message,"
Charlie said. Roxy tapped her visor and swiped in Alice's direction. "It should be on your visor now," Roxy said. Alice played the message. A grainy video appeared. She recognized Lucy immediately, and a middle-aged man was sitting next to her. Alice saw that Lucy was bound and gagged. What's going on? Who is this man? It looked like someone had tried to capture the video while moving. The video swayed back and forth, but finally refocused on the man.
"My men brought the misdeeds of this heathen to my attention,"
the man said. The camera switched to Lucy for just a second, then back to the man.
"Roxanne, I think you will recognize this little sinner. We caught her having relations with this flunky,"
the man continued as he flashed a picture of a man. "Is that Jamie?" Someone grabbed the camera and positioned it so Lucy was in full frame.
"Bring us a list of all of your purist allies, and I will set her free. You know I'm good for it."
The man laughed as the camera disconnected. "Who was that?" Alice asked, alarmed. "A sick and twisted man named Elias. We have history." "Why does he have Lucy?" "I don't know, but I need your help." "My help? How can I find her?" "Elias is a sick man, but he has a code. If I send an emissary with a package, he will release her." What the hell have I gotten myself into? This has been Sonorous, written by D.B. Gooden, narrated by Brittany Goodwin.